what we're going to do now is to route the body to be ready for the binding, except from here to here, which will be, or at least here, I think we'll go all the way, which will be a 45-degree slant. And however, I don't have the proper bit to route. I don't have a binding routing bit. So what we're going to do is just make one from the ones that we have. These are DeWalt bits. And I have two here with different ball bearings. We're going to put the smaller ball bearing onto this flush bit. And that will allow us to create a binding path. So I do have a router binding jig. However, it is when using that jig, it's very important that you keep it straight to the body all the time. Otherwise, you'll have different depths. So I prefer not to use that if I don't have to, and using this method I don't really have to. So I'm just trying to get this little washer off, and we are going to measure to see if the distance is good. So this will be just fine, I think. Might be a little deep, but I think this will do the job quite nicely. Now, if you're doing like I do, building your own, make sure not to squeeze the body of the router bit too hard. I'm just putting this on here for keepsake. We're not going to use this bit, of course, but I don't want to lose the parts. Putting that away, and this is the one we're going to use. So I'm going to put this in the router, and we will get going. Now we're going to route this way. We're going to route this way though, and this way, and then this way, and then we're going to route this way. So we're not going to route this part just with the routing bit, but we are going to go into it. So we have a fluid transition. We don't want the binding to stop before the 45-degree. Okay, so what I've done now is I've put the router bit inside the humbucker cavity so that the router bit is just over the body here. The ball bearing is now not into account when setting the depth stop, and I've set it so that the binding will stick up about 1 millimeter from the body when the cavity, when the channel is routed. So now we're going to start routing, and just we're going to do it in small increments. Okay, so that's the channel routed. I gotta say this poplar is beautiful to work with. Now, as for this part right here, I have a little dent in the wood that I don't want to transfer to the binding channel, so I'm gonna fill that in with a little bit of glue, I think. Sand that down, and then I'm gonna route this so that the channel will be perfectly straight. Otherwise, the channel is beautifully done. We're gonna go from here to here with a 45 degree, or at least here to maybe here, just as a sort of modern arm relief. I don't know, we'll have to see how far we go, but at least to the middle, and then at least to here. But the channel is beautifully routed, and this binding will fit perfectly. I love poplar, man. I've never worked with poplar before, but it's beautiful to work with. It does dent easily, but we'll fix that. If there are any big dents, I do have some dents on the back and on the front. This will be sanded down. And once we start covering everything in epoxy, we won't notice the dents anymore. It's a wonderful both grain and dent filler. So I'm going to flatten this and then route this channel, and then that routing is done. So I'll get back once we start with the 45 degree here. Okay, so now everything's routed. This I just filled with first super glue and then baking soda, and then tapped it to sort of spread it out a bit. I filed it down, and I could see there was still an indentation in the center of the dent. So I filled it again, tapped it, and then I filed that down. Now you can see I have a bit of a high spot here in the routing channel, the binding channel. That's not a problem because I can file that down, but at least I don't have a binding that's gonna go, I'm exaggerating now, but at least I don't have a binding channel that will follow an indentation, so this will be perfectly straight. Once again, the poplar is beautiful to work with. It's so smooth, so easy, it cuts like butter. So now I'm going to start with the 45 degree angle from the arm relief, from center body to up top somewhere. I haven't decided if I'm going to go all the way here. I'm at least going to go here, but I wonder if that will look very asymmetric. I may have to go, I'll go here to begin with, and then we'll see. I can always route more, but I cannot route less if I change my mind. So I'm going to go change the router bit, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, now the router bit is changed. Now at this point in the build, it's very important, or it's important always, but to protect your top, as you can see, I have a couple of dents here, and yeah, it's just here for now, and that'll smooth out. But if you get big dents, poplar dents easy, then you might have a problem. There's only so much that you want to fix in the finishing process. You want to keep your body as smooth as possible at all times. I haven't succeeded with that completely, but should be good enough. That's why I'm using this. If I use a big chunk like this, it won't slide around. If it's a small piece of wood to protect the body, and then first of all I can make an indentation of that piece, and also it might slide around some more. So I'm gonna put on my mats and start routing. I'm gonna go, as always, in small increments, and I'm gonna use clamps to set my stops. so that I don't go past where I want to go or get different endings in the different passes. So I'm just going to use these small clamps, easy clamps. And I'm not going to press these hard. Just going to press so that I notice when the router stops. So right here, that'll be, I'm putting the center of the router bit where I want to stop, and I'm putting a clamp down right there. You don't have to do this, I just prefer it so that I don't go too far with anything. And right here, I'm going to be routing this way, so I'm going to put this right here. That doesn't work. Okay, then I'll have to twist the body a bit so that I get an opening for my clamp. Now, put this here to begin with, or we might extend this, as I've already explained. I'm just putting this up this way now. There we go. Now we're going to start routing, as always, in very, very small increments. And I'm putting my mask on, so. And there we go, nice relief. Right here, the fibers are going this way. Let me just turn this on so I'm sure you can see what I mean. Here, the fibers of the wood are going this way, so you'll always have some flaky bits here. This part where you're going across will always be very smooth, and then slightly flaky here. Because the router bit is going this way, so it'll go against the grain here, then with the grain this way. And right here is right right here it's going across the grain, so you have nicer cuts from here to here than you will here. So this will require some sanding, just so you know. And always, that's why you're going in small increments, because you don't want the router bit to nick some of the grain and tear it out. I have done that in the past. So now all the routing is done. We're going to start sanding this a little bit, and then we're going to glue the binding in. Now let's just show you why you route through. If you can see here, the binding will come here, and then we can sort of cut that off there. If it stopped before the camphor, it will look very strange. Chamfer, sorry. Also, we have these oily bits in the poplar. This is probably natural. I don't know what they are. We have them several places on the body, on the horn. I don't know what they are, but they are going to be covered up anyway. Probably just oily bits of the wood, I guess, inconsistencies. So for now, there's a lot of sanding, and I'm going to start with 180 grit and then 400 grit, and that'll be it. Making sure to do all the sides takes a lot of time. I don't use an eccentric sander or an orbital sander or something like that. I just sand by hand. But everything that we need has now been done. This routing has to be done, but we can do that later. We might do that before we start sanding, however, to spare the body. So we're going to measure out, drill the hole, and route that bit just inside the cavity. So I'm going to do that next. Okay, so we measure the distance, and we have that going from edge to edge. 99.07, we're going to call that 10. Going to go down to 5. Mark that up and drill. I'm going to draw a line between these two. I don't want the hole to be off center. Now 5. Is that center enough? It is not center. Did I measure wrong? Measure twice, cut once. Okay, we're going from the edge of the hole, 94. So that'll be 47. Okay, so that's there. Alright, yeah, so this is the hole. Measure twice, cut once, guys. And we're just gonna go with a little hole here so we know where it is. And then once everything's sanded, before we start the finish, we're gonna drill out where we need these to be. Now let's see what bit to use. This is a bit tall. This might not be long enough. I don't think this is long enough. So we're going to put the template over and then route. Now we're only going to be routing that part just deeper. So we measured this to, what was it, 8 mil? Difference of 8 millimeters. We're going to take that down to 9 millimeters. So we're going to take that down to about 3 millimeters, I think. Should be sufficient. Okay, so the video sort of cut out, but I have drilled this hole. I'm going from the base of the humbucker cavity. I've drawn a line, so I have something to aim after. Same with this. I don't go humbucker, humbucker, I go humbucker cavity. And the same with this. So now we're going to hopefully have room for the jack socket, which is a strat style that we're going to point up, so the wire will go over the strap. So I'm gonna pick all that up, and we're gonna set up the drilling rig. Alright, so now I'm going to route this up. To accommodate this, we're going to use a dark finish on this body, so hopefully this will just blend in. I want to go black, black, and maybe stain this white. I'm going to try that with a piece of poplar later, just to see how it looks, because I quite like the look of very bleached wood. But anyway, this is the rough outline. It's going to be pointed upwards, and then we're going to have to widen it out a bit to accommodate the entire back. Also, we're going to have to drill with a large drill bit towards the cavity here, so that all the wire and the jack socket itself will work. So I've only planted this here. I'm going to use a Dremel. I put this dust blower collet on it. I've never used it before, so we'll see how that works. This also works as the tightening, so you can do it all by hand. You don't have to use tools. And I'll just have a plain little routing bit on there. So this is going to be done by eye using one of these router bases. So let's see how that goes. Mask on. And I'm going to put my gloves on. Alright, so with a little bit of working around, we got that. The hole isn't perfect, but it will suffice. Like so. You might have to shave this down a bit. This will go over the binding, and it's a little bit curved, this cover, but we'll be able to flatten that out. Now all the routing has been done. I'm going to use some sandpaper inside this hole. The reason I'm doing that is that we're going to use conductive paint for shielding, and we want a good surface for that. So I'm going to start sanding now. I'm not going to record that, it's just sanding, it's nothing special, doing it by hand. And I'll get back to you once we start gluing the binding in place. And then we're going to start shaping the neck. Alright.